Over on BBC2 in a couple of minutes, a story for Christmas by Robert Louis Stevenson, set in Edinburgh 100 years ago. Hollywood star Stuart Granger makes a rare television appearance in the story of a recluse. Nothing reclusive in the saga of two unlikely lovers, played by Shirley MacLaine and Jack Nicholson, in our Oscar-winning film Terms of Endearment in 10 minutes' time. But now on BBC1, the news with Moira Stuart.
A Royal Navy helicopter rescues crewmen from a blazing timber ship in the Gulf. The Queen's Christmas message: beware the loyalty that can be corroded into bigotry. And the presses roll. 4 national papers will be on sale tomorrow. Good evening. For the second day running, British and American Navy helicopters have been involved in rescue operations in the Gulf. Today they were called to the assistance of a South Korean freighter, attacked and set on fire by Iranian gunboats. They picked up the entire crew of 20, 2 of whom were injured, and flew them to the Royal Navy frigate Scylla. The freighter was attacked north of Sharjah on its way to Dubai with a load of timber.
This morning, the officers and crew of the Royal Naval frigate Scylla were taking part in Noel Edmonds' Christmas show in a special live link-up. Suddenly, they were involved in a rescue mission in the southern waters of the Gulf. The South Korean cargo ship had been attacked by Iranian gunboats firing rocket-propelled grenades. It was the 6th such attack in a week, and the most serious. The crew, who'd been hiding below decks, emerged waving frantically. With the Hyundai 7's bridge burning furiously, until the arrival of a CBS News team's helicopter, they'd been unable to send a distress signal.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. There is a freighter on fire 35 miles north of Sharjah.
The call was picked up by HMS Scylla and a US-guided missile destroyer which was also in the area. Helicopters from both warships set about diving into the choking black smoke to winch the 20 Korean crewmen to safety, several of whom had shrapnel wounds. The fire, like the ship, was out of control, spreading quickly to the cargo of wood on the deck. All the Koreans were ferried to the Scylla, where they received medical attention and traditional naval hospitality. The Scylla is midway through her tour of duty escorting British-flagged vessels through the Gulf. But according to the Ministry of Defence, she was responding to a normal distress call. There had been no change in the rules of engagement. As darkness fell, the operation continued. And in the last 2 hours, there's news of the American Navy going to the aid of another stricken ship, this time a Saudi Arabian tanker. The Koreans, meanwhile, will be landed at Dubai tomorrow morning.
The plight of hostages being held in Lebanon has been recalled by the Archbishop of Canterbury. In his Christmas sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, Dr. Runcie also remembered the families of those who died in the year's tragic events nearer home, at Zeebrugge, Hungerford, Enniskillen and King's Cross.
Their first Christmas in the absence of someone dearly loved will have a particular sadness for them. And I cannot forget, nor I expect can you, Terry Waite, John McCarthy and their fellow hostages.
The fate of Terry Waite, John McCarthy and also Alec Collett, whose death was claimed by a Lebanese terrorist group last year, was earlier the subject of a televised appeal by Britain's ambassador in Beirut.
For the families of the British hostages still held in the Lebanon, it is a time of uncertainty, of anguish, and an empty place at the Christmas celebration.
The Israelis have arrested more Palestinians in response to 2 weeks of unrest in the occupied territories. Some reports say more than 1,000 are now being held. In Beirut, there was a big demonstration in support of the Palestinians. Thousands of members of the Shiite Hezbollah group marched in South Beirut near the Palestinian refugee camps, chanting anti-Israeli and anti-American slogans. In the Israeli-occupied territories themselves, the army mounted a heavy security operation. They checked cars and used metal detectors. The recent violence in the West Bank and Gaza Strip overshadowed the Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem. Fear of violence as well as heavy rain kept many pilgrims away from the traditional midnight mass in the Church of the Nativity. The Pope's message from St. Peter's in Rome asked men and women to turn their footsteps towards Bethlehem and called for peace.
Happy Christmas. May the peace of Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, be ever with you.
The royal family attended Matins at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, where over 1,000 people watched their arrival. Captain Mark Phillips had to walk with the aid of crutches. With his right foot in plaster, he'd torn his Achilles tendon. As the family walked in procession into the chapel, Prince William showed his excitement at the Christmas morning festivities. But later he found it hard work concentrating on the service, and his mind wandered from the carol that the others were singing. His mother, the Princess of Wales, who was wearing a three-quarter-length yellow coat and matching hat, gave him a consoling pat on the head. In her Christmas message, the Queen said that a Christian example of forgiveness and tolerance had been given to everyone by Gordon Wilson, whose daughter Marie was killed in Enniskillen on Remembrance Sunday.
All too often, intolerance creates the resentment and anger which fill the headlines and divide communities and nations and even families. From time to time, we also see some inspiring examples of tolerance. Mr. Gordon Wilson, whose daughter Marie lost her life in the horrifying explosion at Enniskillen on Remembrance Sunday, impressed the whole world by the depth of his forgiveness. His strength and that of his wife and the courage of their daughter came from their Christian conviction. All of us will echo their prayer that out of the personal tragedies of Enniskillen may come a reconciliation between the communities.
One of the policemen hurt in the King's Cross fire has been allowed home from hospital in time to spend Christmas with his family. PC Stephen Hanson was badly burned on his face and hands after he went to help passengers trapped underground. Today, his wife and 3 children arrived at London's University College Hospital to take him home.
Always had it in my mind to be out for Christmas Day, yes.
And how is your hand now?
It's very good. There's no pain whatsoever.
But you're going to be having to carry on with the physiotherapy for quite some time, aren't you?
Yes, quite some time. The hands do stiffen up, but physiotherapy helps and it'll get better.
Doctors at the hospital say they expect PC Hanson to be back at work by next August. Several national newspapers go on sale tomorrow for the first time in living memory. Staff at The Times, The Sun, Today and The Mirror are at work printing special Boxing Day editions. There's some opposition to the move from newsagents, and many of the larger chains won't be open. There's controversy, too, over the sales techniques being used to promote some of the Boxing Day papers.
The press is rolling tonight to print the Boxing Day Times. Once Fleet Street was silent at Christmas, but Fleet Street is almost gone. The new high-tech centres in London's East End were expensive and the owners want production. Thus, a Boxing Day paper, which means Christmas Day working. Times journalists were at their computer terminals for much of today. Their managers say no one was forced to come in and most seem pleased to be involved.
A good journalist is always working because they've always got their eye out for a decent news story. So even whether you're sitting at home in front of the television or eating your Christmas dinner or out here in front of a notebook, technically you're working all the time.
Has it been a problem actually finding things to put in tomorrow's paper?
No. There's masses of stuff going on. We've been busy today. Busy.
The distribution of the Boxing Day papers has caused some controversy. To the irritation of the competition, those delivery boys working tomorrow may well drop the Times onto doormats instead of the other, still absent qualities.
It makes sense that people who normally read other quality newspapers are likely to see the Times tomorrow. So
it may well be delivered to people's homes even if they haven't asked for it.
It's possible.
And Christmas Day papers may not be far off.
The hunt for post-Christmas bargains is already on. Queues for Monday's sales are beginning to build up in London's West End. One bargain hunter has been camping out for the past 6 days. Struan Kerr from Dumfries is raising money for the BBC's Children in Need appeal. Debenhams help to ease the weight.
Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas to you.
There was a lavish Christmas lunch laid on for the man who hopes to raise £90,000. And with fare like this, he won't mind waiting for another 3 days. The mild weather was a bonus for those taking part in this year's swimming race in the Serpentine at London's Hyde Park. 76-year-old Maurice Connor came in first, but he didn't let it go to his head.
51, 52, 53, 54, 55. Did you win? Really? Time told us.
It was the 123rd time that the Serpentine Swimming Club met for its annual Christmas dip. And that's all from the newsroom this Christmas Day. Good night.
Hello. You've got to be really unlucky to pull your own cracker and lose, as the old saying goes. But at least we've been lucky with the weather. Falmouth, a magnificent for December, 14 Celsius, 57 Fahrenheit. And Southport, an almost, but not quite incredible, 6.5 hours of sunshine. You will notice subtle changes in the weather tomorrow as these fronts rush eastwards and southwards across the country during the next 24 hours. Still from the southwest, still mild weather for some days to come, but already rain is into the west and some spots of rain too breaking out in central parts of the country. And as clouds thicken, those few patches of fog in the southeast clearing away. But at least this does mean a relatively mild night, 5 Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow, cloudy and windy in most places, a broad band of clouds and rain erratically coming southeastwards across the country. It may well be the end of the afternoon before it gets to the extreme southeast. At the same time, brighter weather with some showers coming down across Scotland and Northern Ireland and later getting into northern parts of England as well. Quite a windy day, 50 miles an hour from the southwest, but a mild day, 11 Celsius, is 52 degrees Fahrenheit. And there's a summary of Boxing Day's weather. Rain at times.
Entertainment for Boxing Day on BBC1. At 6 o'clock, the first of a new series of Heidi High on the assault course.
Come on, Spike, get your leg over.
At 6:45, a Christmas Bob's Full House. Then at 7:25, Paul Daniels' Magic Christmas Show and some junior levitation. And at 8:15, a feature-length Bergerac and the Ice Maiden returns.
I mean, it's not just a question of jewels now, is it? You do know what you're being charged with, don't you?
Murder, I imagine.
At 10 o'clock, the deed is done in Agatha Christie's Evil Under the Sun.
What's the matter?
She's dead. She's been murdered.
At 11:55, comedy with Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie.
Waiter, pot of coffee for 2, and make sure it's hot, strong, and in a pot, okay?
At 12:30, Dead of Night rounds off Boxing Day on BBC1.
We're back to Christmas evening now, and in a first showing on British television, Jack Nicholson, Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger star as 3 characters in search of l'amour in a film which carried off a handful of Oscars, Terms of Endearment.